Also of the utmost quality is Mr. Frank Corrado from TSN, who joins us once again.
Wow.
And oh my goodness, do we have
what a segue.
You just got compared to a Toyota BZ4X, Frankie.
Wow. You know what? The thing is, I was the opposite of a Toyota when I played because I couldn't. The wheels fell off, baby, and that Toyota is going to give you 500,000 kilometers, hopefully.
That's right. Look at Frank selling cars right now. I love it. The wheels did fall off, most probably, mathematically, for the Vancouver Canucks on the weekend. And hey, does anybody blame them? Circumstances conspired against them, Frank, and ultimately they were close in that Rangers game. They really were. But given the manpower they had lost going into the game, then mid-game, I mean, what else could you have asked for that team in that setting?
I know. And you know what? Like, you have to give the team credit with how they played, especially in that first period. Like, that first period was dominant. Like, New York had nothing. And to lose, significant pieces during the game, we know what they've been dealing with all season long. It's a tough blow, and it coincides with the Flames still playing pretty well, like, winning games. St. Louis has been the hottest team in the NHL coming out of the Four Nations break, and I'm not sure we all would have had that on our bingo cards, but they deserve a lot of credit for how they're playing. Like, they've kind of taken control of their own fate, and there's numerous points of the season you could look back to if you're the Canucks and say, well, okay, if this didn't happen, if that didn't happen, the Pettersson thing, the Miller thing, Besser not scoring for 12 games, Demko, like there's just so many things that have led to this point. And it's just, it's unfortunate because I've said this before. They probably are a better team than what they've shown this year, but, not as good as they were last year. And they're not going to get a chance to, see if all the pieces could come together for them. We'll see. I don't think so anyways. It seems like it's a bit of a mountain.
This season
now.
is the photo negative of last. Everything went right last year. And I mean, almost everything has gone wrong this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And you go back to like right away Demko. Like that is the biggest red flag. But if it was just that, like if it was just Demko and Lankinen played the way he did, the Canucks are not in this situation. Like they're still right in the mix for a top 3 in the Pacific Division. But then when you add in everything else that happened, Hughes not like we totally forgot Quinn Hughes. Wasn't playing for significant stretch of the year and had been playing hurt, even though you wouldn't be able to know because he's still oftentimes the best player on the ice. Like it really is such a stark contrast of what it was last year. And I guess it's too early to do the whole summit on this year and where that leads us to next year. I think there's a lot of hockey that needs to be played. There's a lot of things that need to sort themselves out. But it's almost like because last year happened, you almost can't just put all your stock into what happened this year. Like they almost have to balance each other out a little bit when they're kind of making their plans for next year now. Like it does have to be. It has to be weighed together. It can't just be a 1 year. It can't just be. We're not just making decisions based on what happened this year because last year was really good and it happened, and we just have to know it wasn't a fluke.
Frank, and I'm not asking you to remember specific games, although maybe you will, but I'm sure you sat on a bench somewhere along the line where your team has an 11-1 shot advantage, 21-4 at some point, and you look up at the scoreboard and you're thinking, it's 1-0. Like, we got to get that next one somehow, some way. It sort of had that feel the other day that for all the good, the longer they left the Rangers hanging around, you just kind of got a sense that it was going to be, here are the Canucks again. They're going to find a way to blow this.
And isn't it crazy that would they have 39 shots in that game for a team in the Canucks that A, don't generate a lot of shots, and B, have had this whole philosophy of okay, we don't want to waste them, we want to save them for quality. They had both. Everything kind of came together in a way that it doesn't usually for them, and they still end up losing the game. So, I'm wearing my. I think you can see I'm wearing my Utica Comets hoodie today,
oh, nice.
Jeff. And so, your question brought me back to the AHL finals. My second year pro there when we lost to Manchester. We had Markstrom in net, but we couldn't beat, like, we thought we were getting chances and we couldn't beat their guy. It was a French guy. I can't remember his name right now. He was good, though. He ended up playing in the NHL the next season. But yeah, like, I remember sitting on the bench thinking, okay, if a couple of these don't go in, it could go against us. And it does, like, it does happen. Like, you'll sit there and you'll think that kind of stuff. You're only human, and like, we've all been involved in games that have gone that way. The thing is, there was massive consequences on the line for the Canucks in that game. And the Miller-Pettersson thing, for me anyways, kind of just took a total back seat to the actual, team outcome for the Canucks.
Was it JF Berube?
There we go. Thank you.
Google
That's
to the
who it
rescue.
was. Yeah.
Hey, Rick Tocchet talked about this after practice yesterday, and really sort of a fascinating line of questioning, I thought, that in a game where the Canucks are short-staffed, hope is in short supply, Quinn Hughes has 9 shots on 15 attempts. The underlying numbers were so crooked, it made no sense. Oh, and on top of that, he sets the fastest speed burst in the NHL in 3 years. Like, he really seemed to be doing it all the other day. But if the Canucks have better finishers in their lineup, Frank, is it a best-case scenario for Quinn Hughes to be shooting the puck 15 times a game? Or, would you like Quinn Hughes to be able to use his playmaking ability to find other guys in other situations that maybe have a better chance to actually put a puck in the net?
I think it's a valid point. I think for Hughes, it goes back to the start of last year where he was challenged to shoot the puck more. Because if you think about the way Hughes plays the game, especially on the offensive blue line, chances are he's going to beat someone with his feet. And so now what do you do after you just beat that person? Chances are you have a lane. Now, in the past, maybe he was guilty of looking to the back door or across the seam or not being as, direct with it. So I think just the sheer volume of times that he's going to have a lane because he beat someone and knocked them out of the way will lead to just naturally him having more shot attempts. But, if the plays are there to be made, I think you go ahead and make the plays all day long. It's just, I can imagine, like, never had the feet like that, never had the hands like that, but I can just imagine being able to, like, shimmy someone, get them to commit, and then look up and all you see is like the goalie or you see bodies in front. The other thing, like we've seen from the Canucks this year, is they go to the point a lot. So that would tell me that in practice, they're talking about low to high, everyone go to the net shot. Low to high, same thing, go to the net shot. So if that is if that's the philosophy, there's going to be way more onus on Hughes to make sure he's shooting. And then if you have the ability to shake someone off and get the lanes, of course you're going to shoot a little bit more. So I think it's those two things for Hughes. And hey, if there was some finishers around, then feel free to spread it around. But I would be quite certain that that's the game plan, and he's so good at it. How do you pass it up?
Well, let's turn our attention forward now, and this segment brought to you by resurrectionspirits.ca. S&P Gin has arrived. Yes, I'm serious. S&P G&T is coming in this spring and summer. Use the code SNP to get $5 off. That's S&P to get $5 off. Resurrection Spirits, locally owned and operated. It's distilled in East Vancouver. A depth of taste for you gin lovers that has to be tasted to be believed. resurrectionspirits.ca. Going forward, we'll see in a few hours' time the status of Elias Pettersson, Nils Höglander, and Thatcher Demko, for that matter, who appears to be getting the start. But without Elias Pettersson and Filip Chytil, I mean, Frank, how do they possibly even dream the biggest dream? If 8-4 does it, as we've talked about, like, how do you get to 8-4 without two centers?
You say a prayer. Like, seriously,
Yeah.
that's what you do at this point. You say a prayer and just hope that you have a magical run in you. The thing is, there's been nothing magical about this season. And so, there's just too much working against you. And you're playing Jersey, who like are the epitome of average right now. They have, players saying very innocent things in the media. I don't know if you guys saw what Jonathan Kovacevic said the other day. He was asked about, the team and how they're playing right now, and he said they have to play with a playoff mentality. And Sheldon Keefe afterwards was told that at the presser and said, well, he's just got to worry about playing better himself in a pretty snippy way. So it's like a Tinder match in Jersey right now, okay? Mm-hmm. And so they're going to be ready to go. The Islanders are like this team that kind of came out of nowhere in the Eastern Conference and are now like pushing up to a playoff spot. I wouldn't say they're playing great, but they're winning games. So it doesn't get any easier there. The Blue Jackets are like, they just got bodies back. They just got bodies back, and they've been losing so much, and now they have like Monahan's back, Goodbranson's back. Like, they have the reinforcements. I guess my point is, it's not going to get easy for the Canucks. It's going to get harder based on who they're playing, based on who they have available, and the fact that if we've learned anything this year, it's not just there's no switch that gets flipped for this team. Regardless of what has happened, that just hasn't been the case. And like I don't know. I said it was unfortunate before. I still think it's unfortunate because they probably, if everything went, 10, 15, 20% better, it's a different situation for them. But that's the reality of where they're at right now.
What do you think's at stake here for Thatcher Demko? I mean, it's been a lost season. We know that. They went and committed to Kevin Lankinen in the offseason here. It would feel to me like of paramount importance is that he stays healthy, that he can't afford any sort of injury here that would set him back in terms of having a full summer to train and apply himself and get ready for next season. But there are 12 games to go here. I guess those that want to believe and the ones that are saying their prayers think that he can come in here and be a savior for the Vancouver Canucks. But, from your sense, what's at stake for Thatcher Demko over the final 12 games, however many he might play?
I think it's more just showing yourself that you can stay healthy and you can feel good. Like, you're at the point in the season where, like, it's not all on your shoulders. You're not expected to be, the all-star version of yourself who has to steal games, although it would be nice. And if they were going to make a run of this thing, that would have to happen. But like, for me, it's more, can I be in the net in game situations, do what I'm supposed to do? How do I feel afterwards? And then can I recover the next day? And can I set myself up? This is the most important thing. Can I set myself up for a summer where I'm not constantly having needles and, massages and being on the table, and I can actually, train and get flexible and get on the ice? Like, that's the biggest thing I think this is for Thatcher Demko. It's almost like I don't know if you want to call it like a spring training, like related to baseball. But that's kind of what it would feel like. Just proving to yourself that you can get through this, feel good enough that you go into the summer that you're not working from behind again. And if that's the case, then that's great, because there's a good chance that he'll have the summer and the start of next season to feel healthy and feel good, and that changes the way this team looks and operates. But for right now, it's not necessarily about wins and losses. It's more about the recovery, of the day-to-day and setting yourself up for a good offseason. It always has to be like a long-term vision in mind with a guy that is as talented as him.
What do you think the defense is thinking in front of him right now? Do they feel like they've got to protect this guy at all costs? I mean, how's that not in the head of the defenseman right now?
Yeah. Block everything you can, make sure you're diligent in front of the net. In a way, it's a good little reminder, and this is not because of Demko's playing ability at all. It's more just because the guy hasn't played and he's been hurt, so why not help him out as much as possible? Yeah. What's funny? Like, I always kind of realize this, like, after the fact, when you watch your shifts back or you watch your games back. As a defenseman, there's so much, like, narrative around be aggressive, limit time and space, go, like apply pressure. And then sometimes when you sit back and you watch it on video, you kind of realize everything funnels to the front of the net. And so as much as we want to go and push and go and apply pressure, and some teams want to have the swarm where they have 3 players in the corner, at some point it's coming to where you just were. So I think that's something for, when you have Demko back in the net that you keep in mind, and you're like, okay, I'll go pressure, but also at the same time, like, it's coming here. So I don't want to be too eager to kind of leave my posts in front and have him deal with, point blank opportunities. So I mean, that's just one thing, kind of anecdotal, but I think, for a guy that's as well liked and who has kind of saved their butts a lot over the course of time, it would be nice to make things as easy as possible on him.
Overall, the mindset here, like, mathematically, they don't have to win out. Like, I always think, that's a lost cause when you need to go 6-0 to finish the season to keep it. I mean, that you're a lost case. Right now, if the Canucks went 8-4, they got a chance. I think if they went 9-3, they are in, and that's an aggressive run of games. But you are allowed to lose contests too, so you don't have the gun to your head per se. Do these players believe it in their brains? Do they believe that they can go 8-4, 9-3?
Well, you would hope so, and you would think so. Like, I don't think they're sitting around kind of doom and gloom listening to whatever conjecture is out there about the team. Like, they would have to have that belief. And there's a certain stubbornness to everyone, because you wouldn't have got to that level if you weren't stubborn to a certain degree, right? You had to push through stuff. You had to defy some kind of odds. So I think, given that there's a lot of players that were here last year, although that's diminishing now as time has gone on, and saw what everything was like last year, there would be a belief within the group for sure. The problem is you just had a game against the Rangers where you absolutely deserved to win, and everything that you're supposed to do, you kind of did and didn't get the result. And so that's the one where you're like, okay, that's demoralizing, because you're going to play some where you don't deserve to win, and chances are you won't. The ones where you do deserve to win, you can't afford to lose those ones. So it's not an easy situation, but I think guys are just wired to still have that belief all the way right down to the end, no matter what.
Well, one of the reasons the Canucks are now in this predicament is the St. Louis Blues have come out of absolutely nowhere. I mean, I don't think anybody saw a 13-2-2 run for the St. Louis Blues. Best team since the Four Nations. They made their coaching change in November, and maybe it's taken a little longer than Jim Montgomery had hoped, but it seems like he's got his team playing the way that they want, and you just happen to be there in St. Louis. You're working a Habs Blues game. What have you seen that's allowed St. Louis to do this? And sort of a question out of the blue here, but Dylan Holloway has been the player the Blues had hoped when they went and fished him from Edmonton, and Broberg scored the winner the other night in overtime against the Canucks. Do you think this is going to make teams step back and reevaluate the idea of the offer sheet in the offseason? You've got so few ways to get better, and the cap's going up. People are going to have some money to spend. I suppose teams defensively will have money to match, but do you think this makes teams take another look at the offer sheet?
I totally think it does. I hope we're in for a summer of offer sheets, because if you look at the UFA class this year, it's not overly exciting. Outside of Marner and Bennett and a couple other guys, like, depending on your your excitement level for a guy like John Tavares, but you're not building your team through this UFA class. But there's some interesting RFAs, like Marco Rossi's out there. There's a few guys that you look at and you're like, man, I would love to pluck a young guy who I can have some control over. And the way Holloway and Broberg have played, it would lead you to believe that could be a very good decision. You just have to find a team that's in a jam the way that Edmonton was, or a team that spent carelessly in UFA season like Edmonton did, thinking that they were going to squeeze their RFAs. That's the thing now. You got to be careful with your RFAs. You're not going to squeeze them the way you used to, because the cap is going up like crazy, and teams are going to have more money, and teams don't want to spend it all on the UFAs that are 32 that aren't going to move the needle, so they'll go and try and spend it on a younger guy, or they'll live with what they got realistically, because that will hurt them less than a bad signing having bad money on the books. So and as far as what's going well for St. Louis, like, they're actually a very good defensive team, and why wouldn't they? Like, Leddy, Falk, Fowler, like Suter, I'm pretty sure all those guys are over 1,000 games and still have, they still have game. Colton Parayko's not playing right now, but you figure at some point he's around. And then up front, the Neighbors, Thomas, and Buchnevich line was the best line in hockey, coming out of the Four Nations break. Now, Buchnevich is day-to-day. Zach Bolduc goes up last night, and they didn't miss a beat. Like, they played great together. And the Holloway line with Kyrou and Shen, like, that's a top six. That's quite good. They're speedy. They can make plays. They have shooters on every line. There's enough grit. Like, Neighbors and Shen are really gritty. They've found it. They probably wanted to find it sooner with Jim Montgomery. But yeah, that's exactly what was intended for them.
All right, Frankie, I don't know where Blake went. He's taking a little coffee break, but great stuff. Enjoy watching the St. Louis Blues team do its thing. I know that big one for Montreal, and obviously we're all watching the Vancouver Canucks trying to keep their playoff hopes alive here. So appreciate you stopping by today. We'll catch up with you next week.
All right. See you, fellas. Thanks, Jeff.